Let's go, Dolphins! Things are hot behind the scenes for the Miami Dolphins. The biggest buzz of the offseason revolves around a familiar name, Tyreek Hill. And I have some important things to talk about here with you. We know that the Dolphins want to make it to the Super Bowl, and to do that, Mike McDaniel will need a quality roster. Greer should have been fired. Can anyone explain why he's still around? He seems like a thorn in the side. I'll tell you everything I know for sure, but before I get straight to the point, I want you to comment below "Get out Greer." You don't fit in with the Miami Dolphins. Let's get straight to the point. The speculation that Miami could trade Tyreek Hill after June 1st is nothing new to those who closely follow the behind the scenes. And while it may seem absurd to many, some say that such a trade would make financial sense. With Hill gone, the move would save a whopping $15 million in salary cap space in 2025 and another $36.4 million in 2026. That's not to mention potentially acquiring draft capital or even a quality cornerback in return. But will the front office have the guts to do that? Many believe not. Still, Hill's contract essentially becomes ineligible for a permanent contract after this season. And if Greer were a manager with vision, which, let's face it, he isn't, he would have already taken the lead on this decision. Greer remains in charge, even with decisions that make it clear that his time should be up. Now, if you're wondering who could fill that spot if Hill leaves, Theo West Jr. and Andrew Armstrong are two potential prospects. Yes, two undrafted wide receivers who are getting attention. Armstrong, for example, led the SEC in receptions last college season. But let's be real, he only had one touchdown. And even with good contested reception numbers, he is expected to score more than 3 TDs this season. That is, if he can secure a spot on the final roster. Meanwhile, on defense, the name that has the most excitement among insiders is Jordan Phillips, the young defensive lineman from Maryland. No, he is not a hype name like Kenneth Grant, but he has a real chance of taking Benito Jones' spot in the rotation at nose tackle. With a pass rush win rate among the top 20 in the NCAA and a grinder mentality, Phillips could be a big surprise in Miami's draft. Kenneth Grant, on the other hand, with his impressive physique and extraordinary explosiveness, is being absurdly underestimated in the betting for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He does not even appear in the top 10, which is a joke. But what has really been keeping fans awake at night is the situation of the defensive roster. The secondary is completely patched up. With the departures of Javon Holland, Jordan Poyer, Calais Campbell, and possibly even Jalen Ramsey, many are wondering, is it time for a shakeup? The short answer is no, at least not officially. But let's be honest, if Greer pulled the trigger and traded Hill and Ramsey after June 1st, then we're talking about a fresh start in disguise. The safety group is also far from reliable. Malfanu and Ashton Davis are the favorites to start, but both have injury histories and are on one-year contracts. Rookie Dante Trader Jr. should lock up a spot, as should Elijah Campbell, who has detail and value on special teams. Nick Moraes, a 6th-round pick, could end up being cut unless the Dolphins decide to keep 5 safeties on the roster. What's more, running back Jalen Wright seems like a lock to be the RB2 after the Dolphins gave up a future 3rd-round pick to get him in the 4th round of this year. Ollie Gordon, despite being a physical runner, should only compete for the RB3 spot, a role that currently belongs to Alexander Madison. On the defensive line, the trio of rookies Phillips, Grant, and Zeke Biggers brings an interesting aspect. Grant, with his athletic build, can line up either as a nose tackle or as a 3-tech. Biggers also shows this duality. It will all depend on how Vic Fangio, or whoever is coordinating the defense, intends to rotate these youngsters. Finally, the fans are still waiting for reinforcements. It is practically certain that a cornerback will still be signed in the coming weeks. Names like Asante Samuel Jr., Stephon Gilmore, or James Bradbury are being considered. And, who knows, an offensive line reinforcement could also appear. But all of this still depends on what Greer, unfortunately, decides to do with the budget. The question that remains is, if you were the GM, would you trade Tyreek Hill now to make room and build for the future, or would you bet everything on 2025 even knowing that Hill won't stay? I want to know your opinion. The tension around Tyreek Hill's future with the team isn't the only storyline that's heating up in South Florida. Let's dive deeper, because this is where things start to get even more intriguing. If the Dolphins are truly aiming for a Super Bowl run, then let's be honest, how in the world do you justify keeping Chris Greer in charge of critical roster decisions? This is the same GM who has mismanaged assets time and again. If Hill gets moved and the return doesn't include a starting caliber cornerback or multiple early draft picks, the fan base will rightfully lose it. Greer already dodged accountability this offseason, and Dolphins Nation knows it. This roster is talented, yes, but it's a house of cards. One wrong move, one poorly timed trade, and the whole structure collapses. And that brings us to the cornerback situation, which right now is hanging by a thread. Jalen Ramsey trade rumors aren't dying, and if he's moved after June 1st, this secondary could be the weakest group in the AFC East. The idea of lining up against teams like Buffalo, Kansas City, or even Houston with a depleted defensive backfield is terrifying. Right now, the only real plan in place is hope. Hope that Greer pulls a rabbit out of the hat and lands someone like Greg Newsome or Jalen Watson. But hope isn't a strategy, and the clock is ticking. Meanwhile, on the defensive line, there's an interesting blend of youth and potential. Jordan Phillips, Kenneth Grant, Zeke Biggers all offer upside, but relying on rookies to hold the front in a win-now season is dangerous. Phillips might steal the nose tackle job from Benito Jones, but are we really prepared to face teams like the Ravens or Bengals counting on a fifth-round pick anchoring the interior? And Kenneth Grant, who somehow didn't even crack the top 10 in odds for Defensive Rookie of the Year, might be the most NFL-ready of the group. He's bigger, faster, and more disruptive than most realize, and yet, no one's talking about it. That could change fast if he gets early reps and flashes in camp. On offense, very little has changed, which is both comforting and concerning. The Dolphins are bringing back the same trio at running back, with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and now Jalen Wright sliding in as the RB2. Alexander Mattison and possibly Ollie Gordon will battle for short yardage work, but Wright is the one to watch. The Dolphins gave up a future third-rounder just to move up and grab him. That tells you everything. They see this guy as a legit contributor in year one. And unlike Gordon, who's more of a grinder with limited burst, Wright has that rare mix of speed and physicality that can pop in McDaniel's scheme. Let's not forget about the tight ends. That room remains untouched. Same group, same limitations. And that's where this entire offensive strategy begins to wobble. Because when you bring back Tua, the same pass catchers, and the same system, you're not evolving. You're just trying to hit rewind and hope it works better this time. But the league adjusts. Defenses figure you out. And unless McDaniel gets more creative with personnel usage and red zone strategy, we could be staring at another frustrating postseason exit. And speaking of the red zone, Andrew Armstrong might be the fan favorite to make waves as a UDFA. But reality check, he had only one touchdown last year despite over 1,100 receiving yards. That's not a red zone weapon. That's a chain mover. With Waddle and Hill accounting for most of the end zone looks, and McDaniel still leaning heavily on running backs and tight ends and close, Armstrong will need a massive camp to even make the 53-man roster. Then there's the safety room, which looks like it was patched together at a garage sale. Malfano and Davis are serviceable, but injury-prone. Dante Trader Jr. is promising, but he's a fifth-round rookie. And with Elijah Campbell likely taking the fourth spot due to special teams value, that leaves Nick Moraes on the outside looking in. Unless Miami decides to carry 5 safeties, which they should, Moraes is probably getting the axe. It's a gamble to cut a 6th-round pick with upside, but again, Greer's the one making these calls, so nothing surprises us anymore. And this brings us full circle. The Dolphins' 2025 projection is somewhere between 7-10 and 10-7. That's not a contender. That's a wild card hopeful. And that's assuming no major injuries and that Tua plays at a Pro Bowl level again. The margin for error is razor thin. So when we hear rumors about Tyreek Hill or Jalen Ramsey being traded, it's not just smoke. It's a signal that the front office might already be preparing for life after 2025, whether they admit it or not. So now I want to hear from you. If Tyreek Hill is moved post-June 1st, and the Dolphins don't get a top-tier corner or first-round pick in return, would that be the final straw for Chris Grier? Should the Dolphins make the move now and build for the future, or roll the dice one last time for a Super Bowl push in 2025? Let me know in the comments. Go Dolphins!